Over the course of our history, more than 60 million immigrants have come to America seeking their destiny.
I came to America because I heard that the streets were paved with gold. When I got here, I found out three things. First, the streets weren't paved with gold. Second, they weren't paved at all. And third, I was expected to pave them.
For the majority of early immigrants, life in America brought a host of new miseries, including prejudice. For as the Indians had been before them, immigrants were perceived by many as inferior to white native-born citizens.
The new immigration contains a large and increasing number of the weak, the broken, and the mentally crippled of all races, drawn from the lowest stratum. The whole tone of American life has been lowered and vulgarized by them.
Most new immigrants found themselves unemployed and at the bottom of the nation's economy. Frustrated, many turned violent. Throughout the 1830s and 40s, English and Irish immigrants comprised more than 50% of the prisoners in urban jails. By the 1920s, Italian immigrants were 20 times more likely to be imprisoned for murder than those from other ethnic groups. And with each successive wave of immigrants, a new ethnic group took its turn as America's most wanted. Instead of attacking the rich and privileged, oppressed and angry immigrants turned their fury upon each other. But homicide among immigrants has always subsided after a generation or two, after people have fought and struggled to enter the mainstream of society and make decent livings. In striking contrast, there is one group that has never been absorbed into the industrial labor force and has been unable to break the cycle of racism and poverty: underclass African Americans.
Immigrant groups were coming over here and making it when black people were still segregated in the South. So that we have to not pretend as if we have a level playing field and that blacks are like immigrants. It's just not so. Immigrants, particularly if they're white immigrants, at least they're white people. You see, and that counts for something in terms of being able to make headway in American society.
Race hatred is the cancer within the American democratic dream. It began with slavery.
The Negro will not work unless compelled to by a master of the white race. If left to themselves, within 20 years they would become as barbarous as their African ancestors.
What you would get in 244 years of chattel slavery, of inheritable and perpetual slavery, is an institutional form of violence in which the whip and other forms of other kinds of instruments were used to ensure that a labor force was dependent and disciplined and to be perpetuated over time. So it is true that the violence was quite real.
In 1866, just 1 year after the abolition of slavery, came the formation of this country's oldest hate group, the Ku Klux Klan. Klan members called themselves ghouls and claimed to be the ghost of slain Confederate soldiers.
We are opposed to Negro equality and in favor of a white man's government of this country. We are in favor of the restitution of the Southern people to all their rights.
The Klan forced America to realize that freedom of speech, one of the principles that made this country so great and unique, also guaranteed individuals the right to spread their message of hate.
And every one of us, we still will not mix up with a bunch of black savages.
Lynching first occurred in this country. It is an American invention. part of our long-standing tradition going all the way back to Columbus, of attacking groups seen as being inferior to whites. From the late 1860s to the early decades of the 20th century, mostly in the South, thousands of black men were hunted down, tortured and killed by white mobs. Almost always the excuse was a suspected rape.
One of the things most likely to provoke white male violence against black men is something that has to do with a white woman. And so that it wasn't just lynchings because black men raped. Sometimes they were lynched when nothing took place, that became the excuse that they knew they could get away with for murdering someone for some other reason.
That's what happened here in Omaha, Nebraska in 1919. The scene of a lynching that was not only photographed, but reported in detail by the local press. Here, racial tension was high, following a series of rapes of white women, reportedly by black men. The situation came to a climax on September 25th, as midnight rang in. 19-year-old Agnes Lobeck, a young white woman, said she was raped on her way home from the movies and identified her attacker.
The minute the police brought him here, I recognized him. I knew him from his hat and from his clothes and his shoes and from his face and his size.
Though he insisted on his innocence, Will Brown, a black packing house worker, was charged with the crime. He awaited trial, jailed inside the Douglas County Courthouse. Here, on Sunday, September 28th, a mob began to assemble. There were reports that free liquor was being handed out to the crowd of 15,000 by whites hoping to incite the mob. At 5 p.m., fueled by alcohol, the mob attacked the court building. Men began scaling the walls, trying to enter by window. At 8 p.m., the building was set on fire.
A man in a policeman's blue uniform threw down a note. It read, "Come up and you will get the Negro." The three of us went up there, and from behind the fog of smoke, somebody handed the nigger to us.
Beaten unconscious on the way down, Brown was stripped of all his clothing. His body would be filled with more than 1,000 bullets.
We are going to teach these fiends a lesson. The white people of this town are tired of putting up with them. If the county won't do justice, then fire will.
An Omaha newspaper photographer captured the grisly scene, the charred remains of Will Brown. The townspeople boldly posed for the camera before a trophy of their own violence, passing a hatred deep within each of them, from one generation to the next. Almost everyone was smiling. Vigilantism is a unique American tradition, part of a long history of mob justice. And over the centuries, lynching has come in many forms, claimed many lives.